I remember the morning like it was yesterday, even though it's been years. September 14th, 2022, a Wednesday, crisp and unusually bright for early fall in Chicago. I was standing in the kitchen of our tiny apartment, the one we'd moved into just a year earlier, fumbling with the coffee maker, waiting for the aroma to kickstart my day. My mind was half on work emails, half on her Mia. She was sprawled on the couch, earbuds in, scrolling her phone like she always did in the mornings. I smiled at her without thinking, like it was a reflex, and she glanced up, turning a quick smile before diving back into her digital world. At the time, I thought that little smile was enough, that it said everything without words. I was wrong. I didn't know the half of it. I had met Mia almost 4 years prior at a bar in Wicker Park, the kind of place where people go to meet someone interesting, but end up mostly meeting themselves and other people's reflections. I remember the way she laughed that night, loud and unrestrained. The kind of laugh that makes strangers glance over and feel the need to join in. It was intoxicating. She had these green-gray eyes that shifted with the light, and I swore she could read every thought before I even had time to speak it. I thought I was in love from the first minute. And honestly, maybe I was, or maybe I just loved the idea of her. That distinction never mattered until much later. Our life together seemed normal, I guess. We had routines that were small but comforting. Saturday morning pancakes, our slightly warped collection of vinyl records, the way we argued over nothing and laughed over it 5 minutes later. I thought I knew her, the way you think you know someone you've shared beds, meals, and bad reality TV binges with. I never doubted her, because why would I? She told me she loved me. Every day. In the kind of casual, yet deliberate way that makes you feel like you're holding on to something real. And I held on tightly without ever questioning if maybe I should have looked closer, listened more carefully. There were small things, of course. Little inconsistencies I'd brushed off, like the way she would suddenly put her phone face down on the table when I walked into the room, or the way she would disappear into the bathroom for 20 minutes at odd times, claiming just need some time, and I'd nod because, well, who doesn't need a minute to themselves? Or when her laugh on the phone sounded different from how she laughed with me, softer, or maybe sharper, I couldn't tell. I told myself these were just quirks, parts of a person you never fully understand. Love, I thought, was forgiving those quirks. Looking back, maybe love is more about ignoring them until it's too late. I worked as a graphic designer for a small marketing agency downtown. I liked it mostly, though. It came with its fair share of late nights staring at Adobe Illustrator, wondering why I wasn't doing something bigger with my life. Mia worked as a barista at a cafe that everyone insisted was Instagram-worthy, which mostly meant exposed brick, fairy lights, and overpriced lattes. She loved her job, claimed she thrived on the chaos of the morning rush. I liked that about her. She thrived where I crumbled, or at least that's what I thought. Our friends liked us. They thought we were the cute couple, the ones who seemed to just work. My parents liked her too. They always said she had a spark, an energy that would light up the room. And I believed it blindly. I wanted to believe it. I wanted her to be perfect because, selfishly, her imperfections might have made me see the cracks I didn't want to face. That September morning, nothing seemed out of place. I kissed her on the cheek, muttered something about needing to get to work, and left the apartment. I had no idea that day would mark the subtle unraveling of everything I thought I knew. Because while I was out there thinking my life was ordinary, predictable, safe in our little bubble, Mia had been living another version of her life entirely, a life I would soon stumble into. Uninvited, like an unrelenting gust of cold wind. It started with a friend, or maybe curiosity, or maybe just a dumb gut feeling that wouldn't leave me alone. Her phone had been charging on the counter while I left for work, unlocked in the way we sometimes leave devices around each other when we trust too much. I don't know what I was looking for exactly. I wasn't planning on anything. I just wanted to scroll, just for a second. Call it suspicion, or maybe the tiniest flicker of doubt I'd always buried under years of love and routines. And that flicker, it became a wildfire. A notification popped up on the screen. Snapchat. From an account I didn't recognize, Mia_secret88, it read. My heart sank in a way I didn't know was possible. I didn't know whose hand would tremble first, hers or mine, but in that moment, I felt every instinct in my body scream, and every memory I had of us, of her, suddenly felt like it had been staged. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew that instinctively. But I did, and what I found inside was a world I didn't belong in, and worse, a world she had built carefully without me. Screenshots, streaks with names I didn't recognize. Pictures of her smiling in ways she never smiled at me. Late-night messages that made my stomach turn. She had a whole life, one where I wasn't the man she claimed she loved. The betrayal hit me in layers. First, disbelief, then anger, then a raw, piercing sorrow that felt like it might eat me alive if I didn't react. I remember pacing our apartment that evening, the autumn light fading through the blinds, casting stripes across the carpet, trying to make sense of it. How could I have loved someone for years and known so little? How could someone I shared everything with, laughter, late-night ice cream runs, dreams about moving somewhere warmer, be a stranger hiding behind a smile I thought I understood? I replayed every conversation we'd had. Every time she laughed at something on my phone or brushed past me with a casual love you that I had returned without thought. I tried to remember the small moments, trying to piece together some clue, some warning I'd missed, but nothing fit. Every memory suddenly felt fragile, tainted by the knowledge that the person I had trusted the most had been performing a version of herself for me. I didn't confront her that night. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone in hand, the weight of it pressing down on me like concrete. I couldn't breathe properly, and I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering when, exactly, she had started this secret life. The what-ifs gnawed at me. Was it recent, or had it been going on for years? The answers didn't come, only more questions. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I had built my life around someone I didn't really know. My trust, my love, my daily routines, all of it was based on an illusion. And the illusion was cracking right there in my hands. With every photo, every screenshot, every hidden conversation revealing a truth I wasn't ready to face. The next few days after discovering Mia's hidden Snapchat account were a blur. I went through the motions at work, but everything felt muted, like the world had been drained of color. My colleagues would joke about deadlines and client presentations, and I would nod along, smiling faintly, but inside I was replaying her messages, her lies, the life she had kept from me. I felt like a ghost, living in my own body. I remember Friday evening, September 16th, like it was etched into my memory. The sky was a bruised purple, a hint of rain threatening the streets of Logan Square. I had told Mia I was going out to meet a friend for a drink, just as an excuse to give myself space. But really I was plotting. I wanted answers, and I knew I couldn't get them by sitting quietly in our apartment. I grabbed my coat, ran a hand through my hair, and left, trying to appear calm to the world when inside, my chest felt like it was being crushed. I found myself at a small, dimly lit bar near Division Street, one I used to take Mia to on weekends, the one with the scratched wooden stools and the smell of old whiskey lingering in the air. I ordered a beer not because I was thirsty, but because I needed something solid to hold on to. My mind, relentless, was spinning through possibilities. I kept asking myself over and over, how long? Who? Why me? And every time, the answer was just silence, which felt worse than any confrontation. When I finally got home, the apartment was quiet, unnervingly so. The absence of her laugh, of her music, of her morning chaos felt deafening. My heart was already pounding when I saw her coat hanging by the door. She was home. I could hear her moving around the kitchen, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that the foundation of our life together had just been shaken to its core. I tried to breathe, tried to pretend nothing had happened. But the truth clawed at me relentlessly. I followed her movements quietly, watching her as she made herself a cup of tea. The way she always did at exactly 7:42 p.m., she didn't notice me at first. And I was struck by the cruel irony. Here she was, so ordinary, so domestic, while I carried the knowledge of her hidden life. And yet, in that ordinary moment, I saw the betrayal more clearly than ever. Finally, I couldn't contain myself. I had to confront her. I remember the words trembling on my lips before I even spoke them. "Mia, we need to talk." She turned, her expression shifting from casual curiosity to something closer to alarm. I saw that flicker in her eyes, the one people have when they know they've been caught. I didn't pause, didn't give her the chance to deflect. "I saw your Snapchat, the hidden account. All of it. Who are you talking to? Who are you meeting?" My voice was low, shaking with a mix of rage and hurt. She froze, and for a moment I thought she might collapse under the weight of my gaze. Mia didn't deny it. She hesitated, bit her lip, and then began to speak, carefully, slowly, almost like she was rehearsing the story in her head before delivering it. She told me about the people, the late-night chats, the meets I didn't know about. She spoke in fragments, stopping whenever my expression hardened, but never outright lying. I felt the walls I'd built around us crumble with every word. And then came the part that broke me entirely. She admitted that she had loved me, in her way, but that her heart had wandered months ago. She said she didn't know how to stop it, didn't know how to tell me, and felt trapped by the life we had created together. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand she choose. But my body felt heavy, inert. My mind couldn't process the duality of our love, the one I had thought existed, and the one she had been hiding. I left the apartment that night, unable to stay another second under the same roof. The streets were slick with rain, the neon signs reflecting in puddles like distorted fragments of my life. I walked aimlessly, the city blurring around me, trying to make sense of how someone I had trusted so completely could exist in two worlds at once. Every step echoed the betrayal in my chest, and I felt the raw, burning anger that only comes when someone you love shatters the foundation of your life. Sleep didn't come that night. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, questioning every memory. The laughter, the morning coffee rituals, the late-night talks, they all felt tainted. My internal monologue was relentless. Was I blind? Was I naive? Could I have done something differently, or was this inevitable? The answers didn't come. Only the ache, sharp and unrelenting. I started noticing things I had ignored for years. The sudden trips she took without telling me. Texts she hid with a swipe or a glance over her shoulder. The subtle way she would shift when someone mentioned a name I didn't recognize. I had written them off before, dismissed them as quirks. Now they were clues, pieces of a puzzle I had been blind to. Pieces that finally fit together in a way that left my heart hollow. I confronted her again the next day, desperate for clarity, for some shred of the truth I could hold on to. The conversation was tense, filled with pauses where words seemed impossible. She cried, admitted guilt, tried to explain her confusion, her fear of hurting me, and yet even as she wept, I felt a growing chasm between us. Love couldn't bridge this. It's not now. The trust was gone, and once that foundation cracks, everything built on it starts to crumble. The breaking point didn't come from one moment alone. It was cumulative. A series of revelations and realizations, small and large, that finally left me incapable of pretending. By the end of that week, I felt unrecognizable. I looked in the mirror and saw someone I didn't know staring back. Someone wounded, someone angry, someone forced to confront the truth of a life, I thought, I had built with another human being, but had only ever shared with a carefully curated version of her. And in that moment, amidst tears, rage, and heartache, I realized I had a choice. I could collapse under the weight of betrayal, let it consume me entirely. Or I could try somehow to navigate the wreckage she had left behind, to find a way through the pain, to reclaim my sense of self. The path forward wasn't clear, and I didn't know if I could trust my own heart anymore. But one thing was certain. Life after this would never be the same. The fallout hit me in waves, sometimes subtle, sometimes like a freight train. The first few weeks were the hardest. I went through the motions at work, but everything felt hollow. I stared at my computer screen for hours, trying to focus on campaigns and logos, but my mind kept replaying the moments I'd discovered, the secret Snapchat, the messages, the lies. Every laugh, every touch, every I love you from Mia now felt like a calculated move. A lie I had swallowed without question. I stopped going out with friends for a while. Texts from my colleagues inviting me for drinks went unanswered. I couldn't bear to see couples laughing, people touching in ways that reminded me of her, of the version of her I thought I knew. Even family gatherings were difficult. My mom asked how things were, how Mia and I were doing, and I couldn't speak. I felt like a fraud pretending life was normal, while the person I had trusted most had been living a lie right under my nose. Sleep became another battlefield. I would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, the city lights outside our apartment filtering through the blinds. I replayed every memory, searching for signs I should have seen, clues I should have noticed. The small things, the late-night disappearances, the quick glances at her phone. The sudden trips she took alone, all of it now screamed at me. I felt a strange mixture of rage, sorrow, and self-loathing. How could I have been so blind? How could I have loved so deeply without knowing her at all? Even the apartment felt different. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every photo on the wall suddenly seemed like a reminder of betrayal. I walked through the rooms, touching things she had once touched, noticing details I had ignored. The faded corner of the rug where she always sat. The chipped coffee mug she preferred for her morning tea. The little notebook by the bed where she used to jot down thoughts. It all felt like evidence of a life I wasn't part of. Mia tried to reach out. She would send texts, leave notes, apologize, beg for understanding. I read some, crumpled others, and ignored most. Her words, once comforting, now felt manipulative, calculated. And I couldn't tell if I was protecting myself or punishing her. She wanted to meet, to talk, to explain. I wasn't sure I wanted any of that. Part of me longed for her presence, for the life I thought we had, but another. Larger part knew that what we had was gone, and no explanation could bring it back. Work became my refuge and my torment. I buried myself in design projects, losing myself in color palettes and typography, but the shadow of betrayal followed me. I made mistakes I normally wouldn't, have missing deadlines, sending the wrong files to clients, overlooking details I would have caught in a heartbeat. My boss noticed but didn't press, sensing something off in my demeanor.
Hi.
My colleagues whispered subtle glances and hushed conversations that made me feel exposed and isolated. I was walking through my own life like a stranger. Social media, which I had once enjoyed casually, became a minefield. Photos of couples, vacation posts, even memes about love and trust all triggered something raw inside me. I would scroll, pause, close the app, and start again. Drawn to the digital world in the hope of distraction, only to find more reminders of what had been taken from me. I realized that trust, once shattered, isn't just a crack in the foundation, it's a chasm, and crossing it felt impossible. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Helen Marks, petite woman in her 50s, with a calm demeanor and an office full of plants and books. The first session was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to talk about the betrayal without breaking down completely. But over time, I began to unpack the layers of pain, the mix of self-blame, grief, and anger. She helped me see that what Mia did wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was about her choices, her deceit, and her inability to be honest. That realization was both liberating and painful. It was a small step toward healing, but every step was heavy with the weight of loss. Family dynamics became strained too. My parents wanted to support me, but I could see the worry in their eyes. My dad, usually stoic, would frown when I mentioned Mia. And my mom would call more frequently than before, trying to check if I was eating, sleeping, functioning. I felt guilty, burdened, like my pain was spilling over onto everyone I loved. And yet I couldn't share the full story, not the hidden Snapchat. The late-night messages, the betrayal in its rawest form, that was mine alone. Friends started asking questions. Are you okay? Are you two still together? I would nod, shrug, offer a non-committal. We're figuring it out. Inside, I was crumbling, feeling the slow erosion of trust and love. I wanted to scream, to expose her, to make her accountable. But the thought of confrontation, the thought of reliving every detail, made me recoil. It was easier for a time to retreat into silence, into isolation, into myself. And then there was the anger, sharp, bitter, constant. I thought I had processed it, but it bubbled up unexpectedly. I would see a text from an unknown number pop up on my phone and my heart would race. I would imagine her talking to someone else, laughing with them, sharing moments I would never know about. The anger mixed with sorrow in a way that left me exhausted, hollow, and irritable. I snapped at coworkers, at friends, at myself. I didn't recognize the person I had become. One night, a few weeks after the initial discovery, I found myself walking along the Chicago Riverwalk, the lights reflecting off the water like fractured glass. The air was cold, biting, but it didn't matter. I felt numb. I kept thinking about the future if there was one, and if it included her at all. The city seemed indifferent to my pain, and yet I felt its pulse, the life going on around me. The couples holding hands, the laughter spilling from restaurants. It was a cruel reminder that life moved forward, even when mine had paused in the shadow of betrayal. I realized that healing wasn't linear. Some days I could laugh at a memory that wasn't tainted. Other days, even a mundane detail her favorite song, the way she stirred her coffee, would send me into spirals of grief. I knew I had to find a way to reclaim my life, to rebuild my sense of self, to step out from the shadow of what she had done. But I also knew that it would take time, effort, and perhaps a version of courage I didn't yet possess. During this period, I started writing again, journals, emails to myself I never sent, notes scribbled in margins of notebooks. It was messy, raw, and chaotic, but it was mine. It helped me articulate emotions I couldn't speak, confront truths I had avoided, and slowly, painstakingly, understand that while betrayal had reshaped my world, it hadn't destroyed me. I was still here, still breathing, still capable of thought, feeling, and eventually moving forward. The fallout wasn't just about me, it was about me. My choices, my blind trust, my willingness to ignore red flags for the comfort of love. It was about grappling with reality when it collided violently with expectation. It was about discovering that even in the depths of heartbreak, fragments of strength, clarity, and self-respect could emerge. The world had shifted irrevocably, but I was still standing, still willing to face it, even if the next steps were unclear, even if the pain was far from gone. After weeks of numbing grief and silent rage, something inside me began to shift. It started as a faint spark, almost imperceptible. In the quiet moments when I was alone walking through the dimly lit streets of Chicago, watching the wind ripple across Lake Michigan, or staring out the window at our small apartment balcony as the autumn leaves fell, that spark slowly grew into a sense of resolve. I realized that the story of my life didn't have to be dictated by her choices or her betrayal. I had been blindsided, yes, but I still had control over how I responded, how I rebuilt, how I reclaimed myself. The first thing I did was reclaim my space. Mia and I had been living together, but emotionally, I had been a prisoner in my own home. I started small, reorganizing the apartment, putting away items that reminded me of her, rearranging furniture to create a sense of newness, new energy. It wasn't about erasing memories. It was about taking control of the environment that had once felt like a cage. Every small adjustment, every detail that I changed, felt like a declaration. This is my life, my rules. Next came my phone. I deleted social media apps that tethered me to her digital world. I blocked the unknown numbers, removed the temptation to peek at what she was doing or who she was talking to. It was brutal at first. Part of me wanted to look, to see the life I'd been excluded from, to justify my anger. But I realized that engaging with her hidden world only kept me trapped. Cutting ties digitally became a form of self-preservation. It's a way to reclaim mental and emotional space. I also sought support in unexpected places. My therapist, Dr. Marks, helped me see that anger and betrayal weren't weaknesses, they were signals. Reminders that I had boundaries that had been violated. I started opening up more with close friends, carefully selecting the people I could trust. I realized I didn't have to go through this alone. Sharing my story, even in fragments, felt like shedding weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. People I had assumed were distant became anchors, offering advice, comfort, or just quiet companionship. Then came the confrontation I had been avoiding. Mia reached out, as she always did, but this time I felt prepared. I had clarity I didn't have before. I wanted her to see the consequences of her actions, not in a vengeful way, but so she understood the gravity of what she had done. When she came over, I stayed calm, composed, though my chest tightened with every word she uttered. I recounted everything I knew, the Snapchat, the messages, the lies, and watched her react. I didn't yell. I didn't plead. I simply stated the facts, the reality she had created. She tried to explain, to justify, to weave a story where her feelings were complicated and her actions were misunderstood. But I had already seen through the layers of excuses. I realized that closure didn't come from her admitting guilt. It came from me accepting the truth and deciding what I would do next. The conversation ended not with tears or apologies, but with boundaries clearly drawn. I told her I needed space, that our relationship as it had been was over, and that I would not allow her to continue to manipulate my emotions. From there, I began focusing on rebuilding my identity outside of the relationship. I started running again, something I had abandoned months before, pushing myself through early morning routes along the lakefront. The physical exertion helped release the tension and bitterness I had carried for weeks. I joined a local photography club, immersing myself in creativity that was purely my own. Slowly, I began reclaiming hobbies, passions, dreams I had sidelined during the years I thought I was building a shared future. Anger still existed, but I learned to channel it. I documented my journey in a journal, raw and unfiltered, pouring every ounce of pain, frustration, determination onto the pages. Writing became a form of therapy, a mirror to my thoughts and emotions. I discovered strength in expressing myself honestly without fear of judgment or repercussion. I realized that the narrative of my life was mine to write, and no one else could dictate its course. The turning point. It wasn't just about healing, it was about empowerment. I began reconnecting with friends and family, rebuilding relationships that had been neglected while I navigated the betrayal. I learned to laugh again, genuinely, not out of habit or routine, but because I wanted to. I traveled short distances alone, exploring new neighborhoods, cafes, and parks, savoring the autonomy I had taken for granted. Each step reinforced the fact that I was more than the pain inflicted upon me. I also faced moral conflict. Part of me wanted to expose her publicly, to make her feel the weight of the betrayal she had caused. But I realized that vengeance would only tether me to the past. True power came from detachment, from reclaiming life without dragging the other person along. The lessons were brutal, yes, but necessary. I had been given an opportunity to redefine myself, and I refused to squander it on bitterness or retribution. Months passed. The spark I had felt early on grew into a steady flame. I reconnected with passions I had abandoned: music, design, writing. I cultivated a sense of independence I hadn't fully realized I needed. And with that independence came clarity, a recognition that, while Mia had shaped my life in pain, she would no longer dictate my happiness. I was not the person I had been before the betrayal. I was stronger, wiser, more self-aware, and cautiously optimistic about the future. One night, sitting on the balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance, I reflected on the journey. The heartbreak, the betrayal, the raw emotional exposure had all been a crucible, shaping me in ways I couldn't have anticipated. I realized that turning the tables wasn't about revenge or proving something to hurt, was about reclaiming my own life, asserting my worth and refusing to be defined by someone else's deceit. By the end of that year, I had rebuilt a life that was distinctly mine. Mia was a chapter I could now look back on without feeling the sharp pang of betrayal in every thought. The turning point had been painful, disorienting, and humbling, but it had also been transformative. I had faced the wreckage, navigated the storm, and emerged on the other side with a sense of self-respect, autonomy, and clarity I had never known before. I had learned that betrayal can either destroy you or redefine you. I chose the latter. By the time winter rolled into Chicago that year, I had finally begun to breathe again. The city's streets were blanketed with a soft layer of snow, and the cold no longer felt harsh, it felt crisp, invigorating, like the world had been scrubbed clean. And I was seeing it for the first time with unclouded eyes. I had moved past the immediate rage, the gnawing doubt, and the sleepless nights into something steadier. Acceptance. It didn't erase the pain, of course. It never would. Betrayal leaves scars that don't fade, only evolve. But the sharp edges had dulled enough that I could walk forward without limping under its weight. I had completely redefined my sense of home and self. I moved out of the apartment we had shared into a small loft in the West Loop that overlooked the city skyline. The space was my own, minimalist, bright and open, and every piece of furniture, every framed photo, every plant was a conscious choice, a symbol of independence. It was the first place I had lived where no trace of Mia lingered. No reminders, no shadows, no ghosts. Just me and the life I was intentionally building. Work became a source of pride again. I approached projects with renewed vigor, taking creative risks I had once shied away from. I pitched bold campaigns at the agency, won over clients with ideas that reflected both my skill and newfound confidence, and even started mentoring a junior designer, someone I could guide without the lingering fear of my own insecurities undermining me. I realized that betrayal had pushed me into self-reliance, but it had also unlocked a deeper layer of potential I hadn't known existed. The social part of life, which had felt impossible for months, slowly returned. I reconnected with friends, those who had stayed during the chaos, and forged new connections. There was a subtle joy in rediscovering humor, casual conversations, and shared experiences with people who weren't entangled in my past heartbreak. I went out to new restaurants, attended local art exhibits, joined a weekend hiking group. Small things, ordinary things, became profound reminders that the world was still full of life, laughter, and connection. Mia naturally faded from my immediate world. She sent the occasional message, checking in, apologizing, or trying to gauge my reaction. At first, I ignored them. Then, after several months, I responded once or twice, measured and calm. I didn't ask for explanations or make accusations. I simply stated that I'd moved on and hoped she could find her own path too. That's all the closure I needed. The rest was mine to define. By spring of 2023, I found myself reflecting on the lessons of the past year, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I realized that the most painful experiences can sometimes be the most instructive. I had learned the fragility of trust, the importance of boundaries, and the necessity of self-awareness. I had learned that love, while powerful, is not enough if honesty and integrity are absent. And most importantly, I had learned that reclaiming one's life after betrayal is less about revenge and more about rebuilding, brick by brick, moment by moment, with patience, courage, and intentionality. I even started a small personal project that had nothing to do with work or relationships. A blog where I wrote about resilience, personal growth, and life after betrayal. I didn't post her story explicitly, but it was a way to process my own emotions while helping others who might have faced similar heartbreak. The act of writing publicly, of sharing lessons and reflections, was profoundly healing. Comments started trickling in, strangers thanking me for articulating what they had felt, for offering hope that it was possible to emerge stronger. I realized that my story, once so private and raw, could be a beacon for others, and that realization brought a quiet, enduring sense of purpose. By the time summer returned, I was dating again slowly, cautiously, but openly. There was hesitation, of course, a lingering skepticism that took months to subside. But I discovered that trusting again didn't mean erasing the past. It meant moving forward with wisdom, choosing carefully, and acknowledging the lessons I had learned. I met someone who respected transparency, who appreciated honesty above all, and who reinforced the belief that love could exist without duplicity. Reflecting on the entire ordeal, I recognize now that the betrayal wasn't just an ending, it was a catalyst. It forced me to confront uncomfortable truths, to wrestle with my emotions in their rawest form, and ultimately, to redefine who I was and what I deserved. The heartbreak, the anger, the sleepless nights, they were necessary steps in a transformation I hadn't anticipated. I emerged not bitter, but tempered. Not broken, but reshaped. And so, here I am now. Sitting at a cafe, overlooking the river in early September. A cup of coffee warming my hands, the city alive with movement around me. I think back to the day I first discovered her hidden life. To the nights of despair and rage, and to the slow climb toward self-reclamation. I smile faintly, not because everything was perfect, but because I know the truth of my resilience. I survived. I grew. And in a world where trust can shatter in a single moment, I reclaimed something far more enduring. Myself, life I've learned, is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes cruel. But it's also beautiful, filled with opportunity for healing, growth, and joy, even after the deepest betrayal. I don't regret loving her, because that love taught me something invaluable about myself. And I don't resent the pain, because without it, I wouldn't have found the strength I carry now. I'm stronger than I was, wiser than I was, and ready for whatever comes next. And for the first time in a long time, I feel genuinely at peace.